What if the very thing that makes you feel alone is the exact sign that you are evolving? There comes a moment in a person's life when the noise fades, but not because the world becomes quiet. It fades because you begin to hear something deeper. You start noticing patterns in conversations. You see the insecurity behind arrogance. You sense the fear beneath anger. You recognize the masks people wear, sometimes even the one you've been wearing yourself. And suddenly, the world feels different, not darker, just clearer. This is the silent struggle of profound awareness. Carl Jung once spoke about the painful journey of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, rather than who society expects you to be. But here's what no one prepares you for. Awakening doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like isolation. It feels like outgrowing conversations you used to enjoy. It feels like questioning beliefs you once defended. It feels like standing in a crowded room and realizing you no longer belong to the same illusions, and that realization can shake you. Because when you begin to see clearly, you can't unsee. When you become conscious of manipulation, superficiality, and unconscious behavior, you stop participating in it, and when you stop participating, people notice. They may not say it directly, but they feel the shift. You're not laughing at the same jokes. You're not chasing the same validation. You're not competing in the same shallow games. And so the distance begins. At first, you think something is wrong with you. You ask yourself, why can't I just relax like everyone else? Why do I overthink everything? Why do I feel disconnected? But what if it's not overthinking? What if it's overseeing? What if your mind isn't broken? What if it's breaking through? Awareness is not comfortant, it is confrontation. It forces you to look at your own contradictions. It drags your hidden fears into the light. It exposes the gap between who you are and who you could become. Most people avoid that confrontation. They drown it in distraction, routine, and social approval. But you didn't. Or maybe you can't anymore. And that's why this feels lonely. Growth has a strange way of isolating you before it elevates you. Every transformation in life begins with separation. The seed must break open underground before it becomes a tree. The caterpillar must enter the cocoon before it becomes a butterfly. Evolution is always invisible before it is undeniable. When your awareness deepens, your tolerance for unconscious living decreases. You start chasing noise. You start craving meaning. You no longer want surface-level validation. You want alignment, and alignment demands courage. It demands that you stand apart before you stand above. Before you stand above, this is the phase where many people retreat. They shrink their insight to fit in. They silence their intuition to avoid conflict. They dim their depth so others feel comfortable. But every time you dim yourself, something inside you weakens. Every time you betray your awareness, your confidence erodes. Because your psyche knows the truth. The discomfort you feel is not a sign of weakness. It is the tension of expansion. Just like muscles burn before they grow stronger, your identity feels pressure before it transforms. You are shedding an outdated version of yourself, and shedding is never painless. But here's the shift that changes everything. Isolation is not evidence that you are losing connection. It is evidence that you are refining it. You are no longer willing to connect at the level of illusion. You want something real, and real connection begins with real consciousness. This is your turning point. You can interpret this phase as abandonment, or you can recognize it as awakening. You can label yourself too sensitive, too intense, too different. Or you can understand that depth will always feel heavy to those who prefer shallow waters. The question is not whether awareness will make you uncomfortable. It will. The question is whether you will shrink to escape that discomfort or rise to meet it. Because profound awareness is not given to everyone. It is a responsibility. It is the call to live deliberately, speak consciously, and choose alignment over approval. It is the beginning of psychological power. And power does not start with applause, it starts with solitude. So if you feel different, if you feel like you've stepped outside the crowd, if you sense that you're seeing more than you used to, don't panic, don't retreat, don't apologize. You are not falling apart, you are waking up. There is a weight that comes with seeing too deeply, not because the world is cruel, but because it is layered. And once your mind learns to read between those layers, you can never return to the surface. You begin to notice the hesitation in someone's voice before they lie. You sense resentment hidden behind politeness. You feel the unspoken tension in a room before a single word is raised. While others engage in conversations at face value, you are decoding subtext, energy, motive. It is exhausting, not because you want to judge, but because you can't help but perceive. This is the burden of heightened awareness. When your perception sharpens, your tolerance for illusion weakens, small talk feels draining, performative confidence feels transparent, groupthink feels suffocating. You're not trying to separate yourself from others. You simply can't pretend not to see what you see, and that awareness creates distance. Psychologically, this is what happens when consciousness expands beyond the collective comfort zone. Most people operate within agreed-upon illusions. Social masks keep things smooth, roles keep things predictable. But when you start recognizing those masks, you face a choice: play along or step aside. And stepping aside can feel lonely. You may find yourself withdrawing, not out of arrogance, but out of fatigue, because constantly filtering what you perceive so others don't feel exposed is draining. You hold your tongue to keep the peace. You dilute your insights so you're not labeled intense. You shrink your clarity so you don't disrupt fragile egos. But every time you compress your awareness, you feel internal friction. This is where many highly conscious individuals misunderstand themselves. They think they are antisocial. They think they are overly critical. They think they are broken because connection feels harder. In reality, they are simply unwilling to bond through illusion. There is a profound difference between intelligence and consciousness. Intelligence processes information. Consciousness perceives meaning. It sees the hidden architecture beneath behavior. And once you perceive that architecture, you realize how much of human interaction is driven by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, fear of insignificance. Seeing that fear doesn't make you superior. It makes you responsible. Because now you understand something most avoid. People don't act from strength as often as they pretend. They act from wounds. And when you recognize that, compassion becomes possible. But so does emotional fatigue. You feel more. You absorb more. You carry more. If you're not careful, you begin internalizing what you observe. You take on tensions that were never yours. You replay conversations, analyzing what others meant beneath what they said. Your mind doesn't switch off easily because it is wired for depth. But here's the truth that shifts everything. The pain is not in seeing darkness. The pain is in realizing how few are willing to see it with you. You crave conversations that cut through pretense. You long for authenticity that doesn't require performance. You want depth, truth, raw honesty. And when that depth isn't reciprocated, you feel the absence intensely. Yet this sensitivity is not weakness. It is precision, A blade sharp enough to cut through illusion must be handled with discipline. Awareness without boundaries becomes overwhelm. Awareness with strength becomes wisdom. So instead of asking, "Why do I see so much?" ask, "How can I use what I see?" Instead of shrinking your perception to fit smaller spaces, expand your emotional resilience to hold it. Train yourself to observe without absorbing, to understand without carrying, to perceive without projecting. This is mastery. The burden of awareness is evidence of depth, and depth is rare. Rare minds are not meant to drift aimlessly in shallow currents. They are meant to navigate complexity, to translate chaos into clarity, to transform unconscious patterns into conscious choice. Yes, you may feel different. Yes, you may feel separate at times, but separation is not rejection. It is refinement. You are refining your standards for conversation, for relationships, for purpose. You are no longer satisfied with noise. You want substance. You want substance. And substance requires strength. The world does not need more people who sleepwalk through life. It needs those who see clearly and choose to act consciously anyway. It needs individuals who recognize insecurity and respond with grounded confidence, who detect manipulation and choose integrity, who feel collective anxiety and remain centered. That is power. So stop interpreting your depth as dysfunction. Stop labeling your insight as overthinking. Stop apologizing for perceiving what others ignore. You are not too much. You are simply awake in a world that often prefers sleep. And the burden you carry? It is not a curse. It is the training ground for leadership, empathy, and unshakable inner authority. There is a season in every deep life when the noise falls away, not because the world grows silent, but because you consciously step back from it. This is the solitude phase, and if you misunderstand it, you will think you are being left behind. But if you see it clearly, you will realize you are being set apart for construction. Solitude is not punishment, it is preparation. When awareness expands, your environment must shift. The conversations that once entertained you begin to feel repetitive. The ambitions that once drove you start to feel hollow. You're not becoming antisocial. You're becoming intentional, and intentional living requires space. Space to think without influence. Space to feel without interruption. Space to confront yourself without distraction. Most people avoid solitude because silence amplifies the inner voice, and that voice asks dangerous questions. Who are you without approval? What do you actually believe? What are you tolerating that contradicts your potential? These questions are uncomfortable. They dismantle borrowed identities. They challenge inherited beliefs. They strip away roles you've been performing for years. But this dismantling is sacred. Psychological evolution demands separation from collective thinking. You cannot discover your authentic self while constantly absorbing the expectations of others. You cannot hear your own intuition while drowning in external opinions. So life creates distance, sometimes gradually, sometimes abruptly. And in that distance, you meet yourself. At first, it feels empty. The calendar clears, the phone grows quieter, the invitations become fewer, and your mind tries to interpret this as loss. But what if it's filtration? What if life is removing noise so you can hear your direction? Solitude is where identity is forged. Without the pressure to perform, you begin to ask deeper questions. What energizes you? What drains you? What boundaries are non-negotiable? What boundaries must be drawn? In this phase, you are no longer reacting, you are defining, and definition is power. This is the time to build inner authority, to stop outsourcing your confidence to applause, to stop measuring your worth through comparison. In solitude, you learn self-trust. You learn to make decisions without consensus. You learn to stand firm, without validation. But here is the critical distinction. Solitude must be used, not endured. If you waste it in self-pity, it becomes stagnation. If you weaponize it into resentment, it becomes isolation. But if you harness it with discipline, it becomes transformation. Create structure within your solitude. Develop a reflective practice that sharpens awareness instead of letting it spiral. Journal your thoughts so they become organized instead of overwhelming. Meditate not to escape the world, but to master your response to it. Channel your insights into creation. Write, build, design, study, train. Turn introspection into production, because solitude without construction breeds doubt. Solitude with construction breeds strength. This is also the season of selective connection. Instead of seeking wide approval, seek aligned relationships. One deep conversation is more powerful than 100 shallow exchanges. One authentic bond can restore energy that superficial crowds drain. Raise your standards, not your walls. Understand this clearly. You are not meant to remain in this phase forever. It is a forge, not a destination. The purpose of the forge is to strengthen the steel. The purpose of solitude is to solidify identity. When you emerge from this phase, you do not return as the same person. You return centered. You return grounded. You return less reactive, less desperate, less dependent. You no longer chase belonging. You embody it. There will be moments when you question the process, when the quiet feels heavy, when you wonder if you are falling behind while others seem socially ahead. But remember this: growth is invisible before it is visible. Roots grow downward before branches grow upward. Depth is developed in darkness before it stands in light. You are building roots, and roots determine resilience. When storms come, and they will, you will not collapse, because your identity is no longer crowd-dependent. It is internally anchored. So do not rush this phase. Do not numb it. Do not escape it. Enter it with intention. Treat silence like strategy. Treat self-reflection like sharpening a blade. Because isolation is not abandonment. It is alignment in progress. Now comes the moment where awareness stops being a burden and begins to become your greatest asset. You've carried the weight of seeing too deeply. You've embraced the silence that others flee from. You've confronted your own shadows in solitude. And now the question arises: what will you do with all this insight? Awareness is not power until it is acted upon, until it is translated into conscious choice, intentional behavior, and meaningful influence. The first step is mastering the internal battlefield. Observation is not enough. You must learn to watch without absorbing, to understand without reacting unconsciously. Your mind will naturally want to respond to every subtle tension, every hidden motive, every flicker of fear in those around you. But mastery lies in discernment. You will feel, you will notice, but you will not be hijacked by every impulse or every emotional wave you perceive. This is the discipline of presence, the ability to witness without being consumed. It is the difference between suffering in awareness and thriving through it. Next, turn inward reflection into outward action. Awareness is a tool, not a trophy. If you understand patterns of fear, manipulation, or insecurity in others, use that understanding to foster empathy, not judgment. Use your insight to guide, to nurture, to teach, and to elevate, not to dominate. You see clearly, yes, but clarity is wasted if it only serves isolation or superiority. The true measure of conscious power is the capacity to influence without coercion, to illuminate without dim, inishing, and to inspire without demanding. This is also the moment to integrate your own shadows. The aspects of yourself that you've denied or ignored are not weaknesses. They are untapped reservoirs of strength. Every impulse, every fear, every hidden desire holds energy. When you face these parts of yourself without denial, without shame, without avoidance, you convert internal tension into inner authority. Shadow integration is the alchemy of personal power. It is the process of transforming what was once a source of internal chaos into a wellspring of wisdom and resilience. Communication becomes your second battlefield and your second arena of triumph. With heightened awareness, you know the difference between words that distract and words that resonate. Speak with intention. Speak with courage. Speak with precision. Do not dilute your message to please the unready, but also do not wield truth as a weapon. Your words should create alignment, clarity, and action. Every statement, every suggestion, every conversation can either reinforce your growth or dissipate your energy. Choose wisely. And then comes responsibility, the often overlooked consequence of deep awareness. Seeing clearly is not optional. It is a mandate. When you understand dynamics, patterns, or opportunities that others cannot see, inaction is betrayal. Insight without execution breeds frustration, isolation, and despair. You must act, strategize, lead quietly but effectively, influence consciously but compassionately. The silent observer becomes the powerful architect when awareness meets action. Here is the essential principle. Awareness without structure or application becomes suffering. Awareness with disciplined action becomes transformation. You have built resilience through solitude. You have sharpened perception through observation. You have embraced the weight of consciousness through reflection. Now it is time to wield all of it as intentional power. You are no longer a passive witness to life. You are an active creator, a measured influencer, a conscious force. And do not mistake subtlety for insignificance. True influence rarely screams. It radiates. It attracts alignment, repels discord, and builds momentum that eventually becomes undeniable. Your presence alone, the way you think, observe, and act, sets a standard, shifts dynamics, and inspires change. People will feel it even before they understand it. Depth has its own language, and you are fluent. Finally, challenge yourself relentlessly. Awareness without courage is wasted potential. The path of conscious action requires boldness, persistence, and clarity of purpose. Stand firm when others retreat. Speak truth when others hide. Take responsibility when others avoid. Every act aligned with your insight multiplies your power exponentially. Your awareness is no longer a burden. It is your compass, your lever, your weapon of influence, and your source of freedom. You have moved from passive observation to intentional mastery, from internal struggle to external impact, from silent frustration to deliberate power. And now, everything you do, every decision, every relationship, every challenge becomes an opportunity to embody the wisdom you fought so hard to earn. Awareness without action was incomplete. Action without alignment was futile, but the combination, it is unstoppable. You are no longer just awake. You are awake and unleashed. This is where insight becomes influence. This is where vision becomes legacy. This is where the silent struggle transforms into conscious power. And now, here we stand at the precipice of transformation, where struggle turns into triumph, and awareness reveals its ultimate gift. After enduring isolation, observing truths others cannot see, confronting your own shadows, and harnessing your awareness into action, you realize that every moment of struggle has been a preparation for impact. The silent battle, the heaviness of seeing too deeply, the solitude that once felt unbearable, they were never punishments. They were signposts, guiding you toward purpose, clarity, and influence. The first truth to embrace is that your struggle is not a weakness. It is the mark of evolution. Most people wander through life asleep, accepting mediocrity, distracting themselves with surface-level pleasure, numbing themselves to complexity. But you didn't choose comfort. You chose depth. You chose to see what others ignore. And that choice isolates, yes, but it also elevates. It signals that you are walking a path few dare to tread. Loneliness is the price of authenticity, and authenticity is the currency of impact. Consider this: every visionary, every leader, every trailblazer, every person who changed the world has endured the silent struggle. They have been misunderstood. They have been doubted. They have been forced to walk alone. And yet, it was in those moments of isolation that they refined their vision, strengthened their resolve, and crystallized their purpose. The world cannot recognize you until you first recognize yourself, and self-recognition often requires distance, reflection, and confrontation. Now, the power within you is no longer theoretical. It is tangible. Awareness has become an insight. Insight has become mastery, and mastery must now become action that resonates beyond yourself. You are equipped to influence not by force, but by presence, not by loud declarations, but by unwavering alignment. People will feel the difference before they see the strategy. Energy speaks louder than words. Depth communicates faster than surface-level chatter. The conscious life is magnetic. It draws the right people, opportunities, and challenges into alignment with your purpose. But here is the secret. This gift is not merely for recognition or influence. It is a responsibility. To see clearly and remain passive is to betray your potential. To understand patterns, dynamics, and truth and refuse to act is to deny the universe its intention for your unique contribution. Awareness is a torch. You can choose to hide it under a bushel, or you can carry it boldly, illuminating paths for yourself and others. Every act of courage, integrity, and aligned effort compounds, creating ripples that transform not just your life, but the world around you. Embrace this responsibility with pride. Let your depth be your standard, not your burden. Let your struggles remind you that growth is rarely comfortable, but always necessary. Let the isolation you endured serve as a foundation for influence that is anchored, steady, and unstoppable. People may try to pull you back into mediocrity, doubt your vision, or question your choices. Stand firm. Your awareness is your shield. Your clarity is your compass. Your resolve is your sword. And remember, the world doesn't need more conformity. It needs more courage, more authenticity, more depth. Every insight you have gained, every challenge you have endured, every moment you have spent confronting yourself equips you to be a guide for others. Your presence alone challenges mediocrity and inspires awakening. You are proof that struggle precedes greatness, that isolation precedes influence, and that awareness precedes mastery. Now is the time to step fully into your power, to align your thoughts, words, and actions with the wisdom you have earned, to take responsibility for the life only you are capable of creating, to stop apologizing for your depth, to stop hiding your perception, to stop shrinking your potential to make others comfortable, The world will not always understand you, and that is irrelevant. What matters is that you understand yourself and then act accordingly. Carry this truth forward. Depth will always feel lonely before it becomes legendary. Awareness will always feel burdensome before it becomes freedom. Insight will always feel heavy before it becomes influence. And your journey, the silent struggle, the solitude, the confrontation, the mastery, has been preparing you for this very moment. You are awake, you are powerful, you are responsible, and now you are unstoppable. Every thought you nurture, every action you take, every choice you make is no longer just for survival. It is for legacy. It is for purpose. It is for transformation. Your struggle has a destination, and that destination is greatness. Step forward and claim it. The gift hidden inside your struggle is yours. Use it, live it, become it.